to mention that, Jim Baker, but I'll be playing the part of Phil Tepley today. And you'll have to pardon me, I'll also be using a script as I will be playing the part of Phil Tepley. Phil couldn't make the trip, and as I'll point out, we're very active in what the Small Business and Technology Development Center does, so Phil asked me to represent him, hopefully just so that he didn't have to avoid the bus trip, but I assume he has some legitimate excuse. So the Michigan SBTDC is a program that's funded by the Small Business Administration as well as the MEDC and a number of local partners. Their headquarters is in Grand Valley State University. There are 12 regional offices and 30 satellite offices, of which one of the satellite offices is in this building. John Beagle is the lead counselor on behalf of the SBTDC locally. I'm also a registered counselor with SBTDC at Dar-Grunewald with Kita, as many of you probably know, is also an SBTDC counselor. So we have presence locally. They have core services involving business counseling and coaching for established businesses that are either looking to grow or are struggling and need to get back on their feet. That's their primary target with business counseling. They also offer low or no cost business education for assistance with writing business plans, marketing, financial management, business legal. This is more focused, the education programs are more focused at earlier stage companies looking to become established startups. They also do a lot of secondary market research, which we've taken advantage of here. Generally, the program involves Grand Valley State MBAs who will do market research with resources that they have at Grand Valley State and provide the output. Some of the local companies here have taken advantage of that in the past. That service is available to both early stage startups as well as existing businesses. There are 4 primary service delivery teams. The small business group delivers their core service to build and assess intake clients. Everyone comes into the system through this group and then is referred as appropriate to the follow-on programs. These are specialty teams for growth and manufacturing assistance, which focuses on second stage businesses. The finance and strategy team, as the name implies, focuses primarily on debt financing and other financing instruments, help with securing financing particularly for growth expansion. And then the technology team, which is most of the presentation today, which focuses on technology companies, which are defined to be a company which has for which research and development brings forth an innovative product or process, typically involves intellectual property, but not necessarily, that contributes, but somehow has to have a strong competitive advantage in the marketplace, highly scalable business, serves as the foundation for a high rate of growth. That is the definition of a technology company that is basically eligible for the technology team services. And those services include assistance with access to capital, ranging from SBIR, STTR, as Jane described. Much of that service is actually provided by BBC, but early assessment and referral to BBC, qualified referral to BBC, is handled through the tech team. They also provide assistance with angel and venture and other equity capital, as well as creative financing strategies, bootstrapping, other sources, milestone-based planning. They also do a lot of work with strategic planning and execution, on commercialization planning. They have an expert on technology road mapping, strategic alliance building, what partners do you need to get there from a marketing, or management, or development standpoint, as well as sales. And then just general access to resources throughout the state that are critical to moving technology companies from concept to customer. They do have a broad range of expertise is represented among the certified tech consultants. You can see through the list there are 2 attorneys, there are experienced entrepreneurs who have built and sold companies, there are people that have worked within financial firms, investing in companies, engineers, and life science experts. So a broad range of expertise that they selectively use based on the needs of a technology company. I've worked with many of these people directly, and they're all perfectly top-notch. Very, very valuable resources based on my personal experience and feedback with a number of companies that I've worked with that have engaged them for a number of purposes. So as evidence of that, roughly $70 million in capital raised through the tech team's activities, 245 jobs, 59 commercialized projects. They do an annual survey, a customer satisfaction survey, and 95% of the customers say that they are very satisfied with the work. Not 100, but you'll never get there, right? There's always someone who has something to complain about. So for the nearest office, as I mentioned, we have a satellite office here. It's fairly limited in bandwidth. We don't have a whole lot of time, but we can provide some assistance between Dar's efforts, John's efforts, and my efforts, as well as Mike Morley, who's also in our technology commercialization office and provides some assistance in technology commercialization. But the network is very large, has a diverse array of resources, and you can find some of that information at their website, MI-SBTDC.org. There are a handful of specific programs targeted at early stage companies that we'll go through. The first being the Emerging Technologies Fund, which is, as the slide says, commercialization funding, matching funds for SBIR, STTR. There is a $5.6 million, has been $5.6 million allocated to the fund since 2008. It's a state match for federal SBIR, STTR awards. Some of the local companies have already taken advantage of this. It is for commercialization of the technology that is subject to the SBIR, STTR proposal only. It's not for other business purposes. It's to enhance the funding that's available through the SBIR, and it's been funded through the 21st Century Jobs Fund. So as Jane described, there are these two federal programs, Small Business Innovation Research, Small Business Technology Transfer Research, more than $2 billion. Administered by the SBA and delivered through 11 federal agencies that have, there's a legislative mandate. If you have a federal research budget of X, you're obligated to provide a certain fraction of your funding under these programs. And so there's assistance available to getting this funding through, as Jane mentioned, BBC, as well as through the Michigan MI-SBTDC, again, locally, as well as throughout the network. Very briefly, phase one, $100,000 on the order of $150. NIH is actually a little higher than that, depending on the program. 6 months or 12 months for STTR. Phase two, you can get some more funding to move the technology forward further. Again, a number of local companies have received these funds, including the SBIR funds as well as the Emerging Technology Fund, matching funds. Phase two is for 2 years. Phase three is the commercialization phase, which doesn't involve the federal funding. What does the ETF provide specifically? 25% of the federal award up to $25,000 for phase one, 25% of the federal award up to $125,000 for phase two. The ETF matching awards are grants, so there's no strings attached other than that they need to be used for the commercialization of the technology that is the subject of the SBIR proposal. To be eligible for these funds, you must raise third-party commercialization funding, private funding to support your commercialization activities. You must submit an application prior to the SBIR STTR deadline, and Phil's notes that he gave me, as in all caps, no exceptions will be made, and I have direct experience with companies trying to seek exceptions, and I can speak from experience that no exceptions will be made, otherwise it would just be a total mess. They need to know what's coming in. They only have so much funds. They need to manage the queue. So you have to submit an application prior to submission of your SBIR STTR deadline. There's a listing of full eligibility requirements at the fund website, MIETF.org. And as Paula said, these slides will be on the Michigan.org website. Michigan Advantage, thank you. And I can also forward at least these slides to anyone who has specific interest in these. Again, and so program-specific information, MIETF.org. The program, over its time, has invested 37, or has leveraged $37 million in SBIR STTR funds, $83 million in third-party private money, $4.6 million in awards dispersed to date to 95 projects from 750 applications and 271 jobs created. Substantial impact. There's also a program that's been recently established, the Business Accelerator Fund. It's a pilot program. These services are available to businesses regardless of location as long as they're in Michigan. So you don't have to be within the catchment basin of a smart zone to access these funds, but the funds are administered through smart zones. So there's 2 years of funding, $3 million, and it's a pooled fund for the Business Accelerator Network, which is the smart zones. Maximum of $50,000 per company, which funds business counseling, legal assistance, technology counseling, commercialization assistance. The purpose of the fund is to support service providers to move early stage technology companies forward. So it is not for investments in the company. There are other funds for that. It is to help to provide resources for service providers to provide critical resources to move the company forward. John Leinen is the local contact for the fund through the Smart Zone. And again, it doesn't cover, I'll just read Phil's notes, it doesn't cover salaries, expenses, inventory, or capital investments. It provides support for service providers to move the company forward. Eligibility for the program, companies commercializing advanced technology. Are you a technology company? Somewhat similar to the definition provided earlier. You've received no more than $1 million in private sector investment. Private investment does not include SBIR, STTR, those are public investments. But any private capital, or no more than $2.5 million in annual sales, and must be sponsored by a participating accelerator, of which Michigan Tech or MTech Smart Zone is one. More information about the program, MI-SBTDC.org/VAF for Business Accelerator.